questions that are being asked, I'd like to mostly address, so this is my preference, is questions that affect how you walk. Questions about living this out. What he's always told me is, tell them that if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they'll be where they're supposed to be. But you need a teacher to teach you what it is you need to be doing. All right, so welcome to Zone 1. You guys are much more enthusiastic last month when it was your turn. And in another month, it'll be your turn again. Okay, so now you know what's really interesting, and Rebbetzin pointed this out to me earlier today. What's really interesting is that we've been doing this for a long time, right? Well, that's not the interesting part, but we've been doing this for a long time, and because we've been doing it for a long time, most of you who've been with us for a while recognize that most of your scripture-related issues and questions are answered in teachings. So when we start doing these zone meetings, they tend to be about other things. And that was just an interesting observation, that we're not getting quite as many scripture-related questions because, and even if they do come up, I usually say, well, go watch the teaching that covers that first, you know? Because mostly everything that you could possibly have a question about is now recorded, right? That was my goal, was to lay that foundation of the base of knowledge that you need, and understanding and instruction that you need so that you can do all the different things, right? That's the basis of all the teachings that you have. They're all spurred by the need to explain something you needed. And so now we've got over, I guess, 700 or so teachings. I don't know how many videos, we need to break them up into parts, but actual teachings, like whole teachings. And now some of them are 60-something parts, 30-something parts. But I'm saying, but if you count all those parts, we have over 50-something teachings a year for 12 years now. So that'd be 600 of them. But you know, however many that came out to, so you're gonna get over 600 teachings going now into 13 years of this. That's meant to be your base of knowledge, your instruction base, all right? I'm not claiming it's the end-all be-all, but it's where you can get most of that information. Okay, we don't teach interesting here, although some of it is interesting. But we don't teach it because it's interesting, all right? Some of you are thinking, you say some very interesting things, Rabbi. I understand that. You just think it's interesting because you can't believe I said it. But topic-wise, we mostly, if not exclusively, cover what you actually functionally need to understand so that you can do. Or more importantly, so that you can be, so you can become like him. Amen? All right, so I'm gonna start calling you guys in the Zoom room up here. And so I don't know what the order is, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Let's start off with m.t.o.i. Odessa, and you'll have to introduce yourself so I can remember who you are. Let's go ahead and bring up.
Hi. Okay, I have a question about Bereshit.
About Bereshit, okay.
So we know that Cain and Abel were already familiar with sacrifice. Similarly, in chapter 8, verse 20, when Noah exits the ark, he built a slaughter place and offered ascending offerings. So we take that to the last verse in chapter 4. Then it was begun to call on the name of Yahweh. Is it too far a stretch to consider that as support for the substance of structure in worship? Or should I leave it just as the familial replacement of the murder?
Well, no, look, when we deal with, and this is very important, you brought up a really interesting kind of concept for everybody. There are some things that are openly and very straightforward explained. All right. Other things, we have to take the information that's available and we have to make logical, educated conclusions. So when we see offerings being made and somebody getting in trouble for not doing it right, the logical assumption or conclusion to come to is that they were instructed and should have known better. Okay? So when we see, for example, Noah, when coming out of the ark, makes an offering, sets up an altar a certain way, and he's not corrected for doing it in a wrong way, he must have known what to do, okay? It's not like Yahweh just decided, well, I really don't care what you guys do until I decide I care about what you guys do. And then I'm gonna give you instruction at that point how to do these things. So that's the good logical inference that we can make. Now, there's also, unfortunately, a challenge for us in that there are things called idiomatic phrases. In other words, phrases that made total sense as to what they were to be understood as or what they meant then. Because this book was not written to you. It's for you. It was written to these people. So they understood exactly the language and the phrases. Like if we wrote a book today, we would be using idiomatic phrases that make sense to us, but may not make sense to them or maybe a future generation who doesn't use those terms anymore, all right? And so if you're old enough, you might understand what it means to gag me with a spoon. But think about what that idiomatic phrase might mean to someone who had no idea what it means, okay? It doesn't literally mean to gag somebody with a spoon, all right? Okay, so we have these phrases, okay? And they're clear to people in that generation or even in that culture, because even in the same generation, things can mean different things in different cultures, okay? And it's these idiomatic phrases. So when it says here, then it was begun to call on the name of Yahweh. So it's not that they hadn't understood the name. The name had been used in many places, right? In verse 13 of chapter 4, it says, Cain said to Yahweh, my punishment's too great. So there's a lot of interaction with Yahweh, okay? And so we see this going on in chapter 3 and in chapter 4, etc. But this is where it's basically saying Adam knew his wife again. She bore a son called Seth. And for Elohim has appointed me another instead of Hebel, because Cain had slain him. And Seth, to him also a son was born, and he called his name Enosh. And from that point forward, maybe I would agree with Lewis, we have now some structure being recognized. And so if we use the word authority instead of name, it says, so at that point, it was begun that they started to call upon or fall in line with the authority. Again, it's an idiomatic phrase we're forced to make educated guesses about, all right? But clearly it wasn't like that's the point where they started using his name. Okay, the sacred name movement might think that because they want to get all obsessed with like somehow the name is an incantation or something magical, but it just says it's really about his authority, okay? So from the beginning with Adam and Chava, and they had some children, and there was some problems, and then we get to Seth, and from Seth we get to Enosh, and so from that point, it says there was a beginning to come into alignment with some order and authority. So I would agree with you, Lewis. Okay? Anything else?
Thank you, teacher. No, sir. Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. All right, let's go now to Ernesto. And Ernesto, tell everybody where you're located.
Hola, Rabbi. I am in Medford, Oregon.
Okay.
I think I've asked this before, but it's something that comes up a lot where I'm at. People come up and talk to me and ask me about tzitzit that we're wearing, and they'll start asking me about what I believe in and things like that. As in regards to, they'll ask me about Jesus, and the scripture that always comes to my mind is in Yohanan chapter 5, verse 43, where Yeshua said, I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you would receive. And so when I use the word Yeshua, they'll ask me, so you believe in Jesus? I said, I don't know who Jesus is. And no one in that time would know who Jesus is, because Jesus is a Greek name.
Okay, hold on, Ernesto. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you teaching a class when these people ask you questions?
No, and that was going to be my next point.
Wait. All right?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So what do you think they're actually asking you? They're just trying to ask you and figure out if you believe in Messiah. You happen to use a different name. You don't need to go in that kind of a depth of explanation. It's not going to get you anywhere. But I have a different question. When they ask you about your tzitzit, what are you telling them? Because when people ask me about my tzitzit, they never ask me about my beliefs. They never ask me about Messiah. Maybe it's because of the way I answer the question. So what are you telling them when they ask you about your tzitzit?
It's a part of me.
That's all you say? It's a part of me?
That's because that's what you have, that's even something you have said to us. Is
I
a
know.
part of
So
us.
wait. I'm standing there next to you. I look down. I see your seat set. I go, what are those? And you just say it's a part of me. That's the whole conversation. And then I'm going to be all of a sudden,
I also
wait.
tell them
Then I'm inspired to ask you about Jesus? So wait, you're saying more than that. What are you saying?
Okay, you're throwing me a curveball. So one of the things
You
that I
threw
do
you
want
the
to mention,
curveball.
you did.
No, you did. Okay?
Okay. One thing I want to say, because I do take things literal. Sometimes I don't always read the small stuff that's there. So I usually, when I say those brief things, to me it's pretty brief. I say, well, I'm not a teacher. And then I always say you should look up m.t.o.i and direct them towards you.
Okay, hold on.
Because
Hold on. There's something really familiar about this conversation, because it's like every other conversation I have with you on the phone. You're not answering my question, okay? My question is, what are you saying that gets them to ask you about Messiah and your beliefs? You're saying something.
What am I saying? Most of the time, I'm not saying much of anything. I do have people come up and talk to me about stuff, because here in Medford there are.
All right, never mind. We'll go to another subject, because this is not working. All right. When people ask me about my tzitzit, I simply say they're the original reminder from God to keep his commandments, and they're the thing that the woman in Matthew was reaching for when she had the issue of blood. And you know what they asked me after that? Nothing. In 25 years of ministry, nothing. They never ask another question, okay? So you are asking or saying more information to get these questions, which is fine. So what else do you want to ask?
The other thing I wanted to point out was...
Just to be clear, I'm not going to John chapter 5 and talking about different names and different things and all of that to some Christian person asking me about Jesus. Why would I do that? They're not interested in that. They're not going to answer that. They're not going to respond to that.
Okay.
So why would you bring them to John chapter 5?
Because he say that he comes in his Father's name, but no one receive him.
No, why are you
And
telling
when
the person that? Why, if I'm the person asking you about the tzitzit, why are you bringing me to John chapter 5?
My whole thing that I was going to ask, or what I was trying to point out, was I was just being, como se dice, I was generalizing.
No, that's attacking.
Okay.
No, you're using John 5 as an attack.
No, I'm generalizing to you, because they asked me a question about something, and that may be right or wrong, but I don't really talk a whole lot. So when people ask me a question, I'm just responding to what I know, what's fresh in my mind.
Okay, so
I'm not trying to attack anybody.
No, but when people ask, have you brought them to John chapter 5?
Not regarding the tzitzit.
Then why did you bring it up? I can't follow you, Ernesto.
Okay, so where I'm at, a lot of Christianity, a lot of Mormonism, or a lot of those things, right?
Everywhere that
ask
is.
Me if I believe in Jesus, and I will say, and I have said, I don't know Jesus, but I know Yeshua, because that's where I'm at. I'm not there anymore. I'm here. So I always try to be like, go into scripture, go into someplace, because I am a history person. And I would know that the first time the name Jesus ever used in a Bible was in June of 1632. Okay, so basically, the eidetic memory I have, the stuff that I know about, I'll talk about with them, but I will always let them know that I am not a teacher. And I always bring you up.
All right.
My whole thing, why I was even bringing that up, is because I had a question.
Go ahead, ask your question.
Okay. So when Yeshua said that in John chapter 5, verse 43, okay, sometimes it makes me think that he was referring to another time, because when King James removed Yeshua's name from the Bible and replaced it with Jesus, okay, and then they idolize Jesus, they make they crosses with him on it, things like that. From what I know, it's like the name's only been in the Bible 390 years.
Ernesto, hold on. Do you understand that John chapter 5 has nothing to do with an actual name? It has nothing to do with Yeshua versus Jesus or any other name. There's no name just because the word name's there, it's not about a name. So you can't say it's about a different time because that name didn't exist. It has nothing to do with the actual name. It has to do with if someone came in their own authority or a different authority, you would listen to them. But I come in my Father's authority and you don't listen to me. It has nothing to do with the name. And I've explained this, by the way, in other teachings.
Well, and I get that, but there's like the fact that where we're at today, I was trying to bring it to where we're at today, because the simple fact is wherever you go, somebody's, there's even there in Brazil, where they have the big statue and things like that. And
what's your question, though?
I would like to know a better way to explain something like that to people.
Here's the answer. Stop explaining it. I don't explain it. I have no idea what you're doing. I've said this for years. I don't explain it. I just say I call Messiah Yeshua. You call him whatever you want. I call him Messiah Yeshua. That's all I explain. I never go any further than that. Stop explaining it.
Okay. And then the other question that I had was basically Yaakov 1, verse 27. It talks about the religion that is clean and undefiled, that Abba accepts, is to look after orphans and widows, and to I have to go back to that, but at the end of it, it's talking about
keeping oneself unstained from the world.
Abba standards of living clean and undefiled. So I think you also pointed out that this book is not about a religion. It's only about a covenant. And I don't know.
What's your question?
My question is, that's correct, right? It's only about a covenant. It's not about a religion.
Right.
And the only thing that he accepts is that we look after those who can't look after themselves.
Okay, so do you have a problem with James using the word religion? I don't understand your question.
No, I don't. It's just people sometimes I get in a situation where they'll ask what religion I am. I said, I'm not a part of a religion. It's, to be honest with you, I'm looking for a means to be able to say something that is brief, because I am autistic. And for me, it's not such a simple thing. I have an eidetic memory, so I have a lot of stuff in my head. And a lot of times I want to be able to just say something that is brief. And like you were saying, you say that, and I call him Messiah Yeshua. Okay.
Wait. Okay, look. I don't know how much the autism is kicking in or wherever the other problems are, but here's the problem. You get hung up on anything anybody says that you disagree with or you think is wrong, and you want to fix that instead of just answering their question. Okay? So when they ask me what religion I am, hold on. When they ask me what religion I am, if they ever do that, which nobody ever does, but if they ever did, I'm not going to address that religion is a wrong thing or I'm not part of religion. I'm simply going to say I'm Messianic, Torah observant, and I believe that makes me Israel. I answer the question as to what I am because I'm answering their question. The question is they want to know what belief system I have, okay? I don't want to argue about if religion is a wrong word. I'm not going to argue about the name being the wrong name. I'm just going to answer their question. You're overcomplicating this. If they ask you what religion, you say, I'm a Torah observant Messianic believer. I'm a Torah observant believer in Messiah. That's what I am. Okay, they're asking you what you believe. They're not asking you, they understand it as religion. Are you a Christian? Are you a Jew? Are you a Muslim? Are you this? Are you that? They're trying to put you in a box. So give them the box to label you with. I'm Messianic and I'm Torah observant. It's very simple.
Messianic, Torah, observant, Israel.
That's what our name is. That's why I gave you the name m.t.o.i, so you know what to call yourself, how to explain what you are. Okay, but don't get hung up on the idea that they said religion, and religion is a wrong word. I agree with you, it's the wrong word, but that's not what they're asking. But the challenge may be the autism and having it be hard for you to understand what it is they're actually asking, okay?
Well, Rabbi, thank you for answering my questions. I meant no annoyance to you, and, you know...
No, Ernesto, we've talked many times,
language.
so I'm kind of used to how this goes. Just try to stop overcomplicating it, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. So when people ask you a question, just answer the question. Don't get hung up on the nuances of how the question was asked. All right, just answer the question the simplest way you can, all right? People ask me, this happened to me yesterday, the day before I was in the bank, and they asked me what the deal is with the tzitzit. I guess it was Thursday, all right? Because the guy's seen me a million times, and I know the manager of the bank. And he says, by the way, can I just ask? I said, yeah. This is the original string around the finger that God gave to his people to remind them to keep the commandments. I said, it also is what the woman in Matthew was reaching to grab when she had the issue of blood. And he goes, oh, okay, thanks. That was the end of it. By the way, I've answered that question hundreds of times, and it's always the end of it. They don't want to know anything else. You know, that's all. It's very simple. But I don't get hung up on, like, what religion are you? Well, I tell you, I know my real answer is simply, I said, you know what Christians believe? They believe in Messiah. Jews keep commandments. We're kind of this hybrid of the two. Okay? That is my short, simple answer to almost everybody. Okay? We keep the commandments like the Jews, not exactly the way they do. And we believe in Messiah like the Christians, not exactly the way they do. But that's the answer that makes sense to them, that they can put me in this box so they know what to put me. Okay? And they're not that interested, or they're going to ask more questions. All right? Okay. But thank you, Ernesto. That did give us the chance to do that. You can leave the room now. All right, next. Let's go to, let's see. Hannah Reed, you're back. Let's try you again.
There's a thought on the internet that the believers of Messiah should have an open womb, meaning they don't try to prevent or protect against having children, and that you should leave it completely up to the Father. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Okay, I think that's stupid.
Fair enough.
Oh, okay, let me explain more detail than that. Okay, I wouldn't have this opinion quite as clearly if I didn't have my own children, okay? But you should never, because you will create more problems, you should never have more children than you actually want, okay? Because parenting is your responsibility once you have them. And you will not treat that child right and not parent that child right and do everything that child needs, and you'll jack that child up like your parents did to you if you have more children than you actually want, okay? And so I don't agree with that. We're just going to keep, being intimate and just have as many babies as whatever happens. Well, it's not just whatever happens. You actually have enough of a brain and enough instruction in whatever little education you got to know that certain times of the month are much more fertile than others. So it's not just random, okay? If you don't have intercourse during that window, you're not going to get pregnant most of the time. I mean, very slim chance. Actually, even if you do it during the window, you don't always get pregnant. But you have some control over that, okay? But I think it's foolishness to have more children than you want, because then you will not do what they need. They need a good, loving parent that wants them, okay? Many of you, don't raise your hand, but many of you had parents that didn't want you. Okay? And I'm sure that was not fun. Okay? You were born to a parent who did not want you. So I think that the internet, all these loudmouths ought to just shut up, okay? Because you don't speak for everybody. Don't speak for everybody by telling them what they should do. I'm not going to tell you how many to have or not have. I'm going to say don't have more than you actually are desiring and willing to take care of properly and raise, okay? To give the proper attention, love, and everything else that is required to be a parent. Look, I'm in a whole different place now than I was when I first started in ministry, because when I first started, my wife and I had just gotten married. We had no children at that point. I didn't know anything about what that experience was going to be like, okay? My brothers are not that much younger than me, so it wasn't like I was older and then there was a baby in the house and I got to see some of that, okay? And so we're all within 5 years. So last baby born, I'm 5 years old. I mean, so there wasn't a lot of getting the understanding of what that's like. Some of you helped raise younger siblings because there was a big enough gap. And so you were like 12, 15, whatever years old, and a baby came in and you helped. So you know a little bit more about this. But see, now I've got 2 children that are now adults. I've gone through the whole cycle of that. And I can tell you, in all the counseling I do and all the people I talk to, you guys are all messed up, the ones that are messed up because of parents that didn't want you, also other reasons, but a lot of it is you have parents that didn't want you. And they treated you horribly because they didn't want you. They blame you for things that were happening in their marriage because they didn't want you, or for their life because they didn't want you, and you cost them this and that, or whatever, you all this inconvenient, whatever, and so you were blamed for everything because they didn't want you. Do not have any more babies than you want. That is not fair to the baby, okay? All right, so did that answer your question, Hannah?
Absolutely. That was very powerful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a feeling that's what you were going to say, but I just wanted to actually hear it. So I appreciate that.
Well, good. All right. Look.
I have another question.
But one last thing about that. This is why we should not be just learning from random people on social media. Okay? You have some questions about things, go get that find your anointed appointeds and go ask those questions there. Stop listening to talking heads and loudmouths all over the internet. All right? Now, I listen to them for entertainment value because sometimes they say really dumb stuff and I laugh, okay? But I'm not going to get information that I'm now going to actually apply in my life from just random talking heads on the internet. Now, there are ones I listen to because I know they're established and qualified in the area I'm listening to them in, like finance or real estate or health or something. Qualified people, all right? The equivalent in their industry of like a fivefold. They have an anointing and a gift, and they're good and qualified to teach you what they've already studied, learned, and applied in their own lives. But I'm not listening to random people that have no anything, okay? All right, Hannah, what's your next question?
Thank you. This is another one that's circulating on the internet, and I just wanted to hear it from you. Is it a sin against Yahweh for a woman to wear makeup? Like she's not not pleased with how Yah made her? And is it unloving to your brothers and sisters in the body for a woman to make herself attractive outside of the bedroom?
Okay, again, I disagree, more nonsense, okay? Look, okay, there's one thing to take things to the point of you're trying to create lust in a man. In other words, there's ways for women to dress that will get a man's attention in a wrong way, all right? There's also ways for you to dress and make yourself up that just makes you look beautiful. Okay, and a lot of you understand how to do that, and that's fine. Okay, so we make sure that certain things are long enough or up enough to cover up the things that need to be covered up, and not clinging or whatever in some way that would make someone look at you for desire. You can wear very beautiful everything, dresses, shirts, pants, whatever, and that's fine, but there's also that stuff that's meant, you're going out there to get somebody, come hither type look, okay? And so we don't do that. And we also don't want to make yourself get all made up to the point where, look, you ought to look in the mirror and make sure you don't look like, I don't know, some of you do not know what you're doing laying stuff on your face, okay? All right? If it's obvious you're wearing makeup, you did it wrong. It should make it so that your natural colors or whatever it is are beautified and the blemishes are maybe covered up, and you just look good instead of looking clearly like you just caked on a bunch of stuff. All right? Because it's supposed to still make you look like you as an enhancement on some level. Okay? Bring out a little bit of highlights here or there and diminish some things that may be things you want to cover up a little bit. That's fine. But no, it's not a sin. Okay? But you don't want to be doing things that are actively intended to get the attraction. Okay? All right? And there are women that do that, for sure. And some of you did that at different points in your life, so you know what I'm talking about. And you don't want to be doing that. All right, Hannah, is that good? Did that answer the question?
Yes, and I have one final question.
Sure.
And that's, how do you recommend celebrating Hanukkah? Because we don't want it to look like a Jewish Christmas to our family. And we're more so concerned, like, would you let your family give your kids gifts for Hanukkah?
Okay. All right, so obviously, and I want to welcome you, you're somebody that's relatively new to us because these are questions I answer every year, so you must not have heard them before, which is great. All right, now that's fine. Listen, new people ask questions all the time in the Zone meetings especially, which is good. Everybody gets to hear them again. All right, so I do have some teachings that are either in a playlist or will be in a playlist soon now that we're finished with Sukkot. On the YouTube channel, usually we have a playlist of upcoming holidays and holy days like teachings. So all of the Hanukkah related things should be being posted into a playlist on the YouTube channel here soon. So you could go ahead and look at that. But let me just answer the question in a brief way. Number one, you're absolutely right. We do not want to turn this into some sort of, Hanukkah Christmas, okay? The gift giving is not a Hanukkah thing. It was invented by the New York Jewish community in the 1960s. Not like 0 minus 19, and literally 60 years ago, okay? In the 1960s, here in New York, okay, in America, all right? It's a new thing. How do you know that, Rabbi? Because I have a book called The Jewish Book of Why. And in it says, why do we give gifts on Hanukkah? And it tells you because it started in the 1960s, okay? To compete with Christmas. Oh, because all the kids would come home going, oh, my friends are getting all these presents on one night and the whole thing. And so the parents say, fine, we'll give you 8 days of it. Go compare that, okay? Tell them, you get 1, we get 8. It's dumb. Okay, so there are teachings that I have that's called like a time to rededicate yourself. There's other things like that where it's the Feast of Dedication, where they rededicated the temple after the whole thing with the Maccabees, all right? And it's the reason it's 8 days is because they wanted to use it for Sukkot and Shemini Atzeret, but they couldn't get it done until later. And they couldn't move the holy day, because that would be wrong. So they did an 8-day celebration celebrating the rededicating of the temple. And they enjoyed it so much, they did it again the next year until it became a tradition to do, okay? So we're doing it, and listen to the teachings about it, Hannah, because I do have teachings that cover that, okay? And just look them up on the YouTube channel or any of the other channels that you have me, just, m.t.o.i Hanukkah, and you'll find different things that I've posted in there, or rededication, okay? And that should cover it. But no, let's not do this. Now, your other question had to do with gifts that your parents or somebody else gives your children. Okay? So, my mother, Jewish family, wanted to, of course, give my children Hanukkah presents. So I told my mother that we don't do that. But you're not going to tell grandma what to do because she's not going to listen. All you grandmas know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay? So what I told my mother was, you can send the presents, because I don't live in New York, so she mails them to. So you can send them anytime you want. I'm not giving them to the children during Hanukkah, nor am I going to leave them wrapped in any Hanukkah paper. So you might as well just send them without paper. And I'm going to give them to them randomly whenever I feel like it and say, Grandma loves you and sent you a present. Okay? Because I'm not connecting it to Hanukkah for them. I said, if you want to give them presents, that's your well and good. I think that's great. You want to give your grandchildren presents. I'm not giving them Hanukkah presents. Okay? I would maybe give them to them before Hanukkah, maybe give them some after Hanukkah. I'm not doing it so they're connecting it to somehow that's a Hanukkah thing. Okay? Now, the good news for both of my kids is that one is born right before Hanukkah, like a month before. The other one's born right after, a month after. So their birthdays are close enough to that too. But my mother understood that. I get to be the gatekeeper. I'm not going to do not get in a fight with your parents over or anybody else about giving your children presents. Just say, look, you give them to me and I'll decide what to do with them. They will get them from you but they're not getting them at Hanukkah, all right? And my mother never had a problem with that. She still sent the presents when they were little all the time, knowing that I was going to do that, okay? Win-win. Does that help, Hannah?
That was perfect. Thank you for your time.
Oh, you're very welcome. Okay? And look, this is, by the way, one of the things that I have a problem with some of the Orthodox, okay? There are Orthodox rabbis that are promoting that you should give gifts to your children on Hanukkah. Look, I went to Australia, all right? Oh, man, about 4 or 5 years ago, right? When I went to Australia, I went to New Zealand and I got invited to make a short trip over to Australia just real quick and meet with the congregation there. And it didn't go so well because it was right around Hanukkah time and they were asking about Hanukkah. And I said to them all the same things I just told Hannah. And they argued with me and got in a big fight with me because they were very Orthodox-leaning congregation. You know, I have a lot of Christian-leaning congregations, it's a very Orthodox Jewish-leaning congregation. And they got in my face and told me how wrong I was. They got all offended. They said, oh, but the children, you know what? That sounds like you geniuses saying the same thing about Christmas. Oh, but the children, the children don't care. You do. Every parent I know that told me when they finally stopped Christmas, the children did not care. You did. Okay? And so stop using the children as an excuse. And so we had a little fight when I was visiting in Australia. And I was like, look, I'm the rabbi. I'm here, and you brought me here. You're going to hear me or you're not going to hear me. That's fine. You don't have to do what I say. But they got a little upset with me and never invited me back. Okay? Because they want to go in that Jewish direction. And so, we try to do things in a more pashat, straightforward, basic, straight way. The Hanukkah, we see in John, right? Yeshua's, during Hanukkah, he's there on Solomon's porch. And so it's mentioned in a positive way. But it was about the rededication. And we should be using it to look at ourselves in the idea of rededicating. It's not about some miracle of oil, which, by the way, doesn't exist in any writing anywhere. It's like an old grandma tale or something, okay? That got passed down through the centuries. Because I remember being with 3 maybe other teacher leaders. This goes back a long time, 25 years ago maybe. And we looked at every reference, every place we go. There really is not any established oil miracle, all right? But it's a great way for a grandma to teach a child why we have 8 days, because the oil burned and whatever, okay? Now, it might have happened, don't get me wrong. But that seems to be the focus when that's not the focus. The focus isn't some oil-burning miracle. The focus is the victory that was had, and then the cleansing out of the abomination of desolation, and the cleansing out of all the other stuff to make the temple usable again, and then celebrating that, okay? Now, this is where human beings are great at convoluting things so we miss the point. It's like Christians trying to make this argument that Messiah is the reason for the season when we get to Christmas, when really, how is Santa Claus, reindeer, trees, and presents anything about Messiah? You see, they convolute the thing. Not to mention he wasn't born then anyway, okay? But I'm just saying is, even the things they're doing, like what does an egg-laying rabbit with chocolate, and what does that have to do with the resurrection? They convolute things by putting all this mixture in that you miss the point, okay? Well, the Jews do the same thing to a certain degree, okay? And so we do not do that. We're not going to participate in that. All right, thank you. Okay, Hannah already left the room. Okay, let's go now to Shakara, and you were just here. Good to see you again.
Shalom, Rabbi.
Shalom.
So I have like 95,000 questions since I last saw you, so I'm going to ask one.
Okay, now we're going to switch and go to...
No, you can't leave. This one's for my son, too, so you have to help me explain this to him or direct him somewhere. So he was reading about Esau and Jacob and asking me to explain what exactly is a birthright and how can you steal it?
Okay. Well, it's not so much stealing it that was going on. I mean, you can't just take something. It's not like a physical thing you can take. What happened was there was a saying, well, if you want this, then give me your birthright. And so the idea of feeling maybe tricked into it or some other thing may be called stealing, but it wasn't actually that.
Okay.
So the birthright is that from the beginning of all things, okay, until we get into more these we're not tribes anymore and that kind of thing. It was always the birthright of the firstborn to receive everything from the parents, to then also take care of the other younger siblings as well. The oldest received everything. It was by birth their right, okay? And I explained this actually really in detail to some degree, I guess, in the Discovering Your Identity. All right, so go back and listen to Discovering Your Identity. Man, at some point it's gonna be hard to remember which teachings cover what things. But, okay? But in Discovering Your Identity, you'll see that it is talked about, in terms of understanding, because the birthright ends up, there's two parts to it, okay? There's the blessing and there's the authority. And that actually gets split at some point, all right? And so, but when you're explaining to your son, the birthright meant that the inheritance of all of what the parents had, all of the wealth, all of the things they owned, all of the flocks or the crops or whatever it was, all would go to the firstborn, who was then obligated to then provide for the younger borns. Which is why it was a big deal when you get to Jacob and his children, because we end up having Joseph get that, and that skips over a lot of guys, okay? Because out of 12, Joseph was almost at the bottom, okay? And so, but we have reasons that we know some of them disqualified themselves. Okay, certainly Reuben, right? And then we have Dan, and we've got, issues with obviously Levi and Simeon and things. So we have things that we extrapolate out, again, using an educated guess, why they got skipped over, all right? And so that birthright, by the way, then gets passed to Ephraim and Manasseh. Joseph doesn't even get the right to do it himself, because Jacob goes ahead and gives it to the grandchildren. Okay? Because first he adopts them as his own, and then he gives them the birthright. He passes that on. So there's a lot of stuff going on with that. But did that help, Shakara? Did that answer it?
Yes, that is fabulous. I'm still working on getting him to watch teachings. Pray for me.
How old?
But
How old?
I'll go back and watch. That's the 20-year-old.
20? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, talk to you in a minute.
Okay, but let me just say this about birthright. More I want to say about obligation, all right? Especially to you men who might be listening or here. I have to deal with so much petty, baby, weak nonsense because you firstborn men are not doing what you need to do to take care of your parents that are aging and make sure that everything is handled, and it ends up falling on a daughter that's younger than you or whatever it is, or, these men are just not doing their job. You get parents in their 80s and 90s, okay, who need to have somebody make decisions and take care of them and all that other stuff. That falls on you, inheritance firstborn, okay? I don't care if your sister's older. You're the first man, it's on you, okay? Look, when my father started falling apart and declining, I don't live in New York. My next younger brother lives in New York. He started taking upon himself a bunch of the stuff until finally I found out about it. I didn't know what was going on. I said, excuse me, I'm the firstborn. Give me all that burden. Because he was stressing with it. He's more white-blue, okay? He was stressing with it. I said, give it to me. I'll take care of it. It's handled. Don't worry about it. Give me all the information you have and all the things that need to be done. I'm the firstborn, okay? Well, Rabbi, did you know what to do? I had no idea what to do. How's that even relevant? You just do what you have to do, okay? I said, have mom call me, because she was calling him because he lives half an hour away. And I live 12 hours away, all right, at least by car, right? Or 15. So she wouldn't call me. I said, but I'm the firstborn. You know how smooth everything went once that was fixed? Nobody else ever had another problem, because I'm also a very competent firstborn, okay, who understands my responsibility to take care of everything, all right? Because part of the inheritance was, and the way this would work, and maybe Shakara, you can help this with your son, the inheritance was not given to the child after the parent died. It was given before so that the parents could be taken care of, no longer having to run everything and manage everything as they were getting older. So this would happen younger. You see this in Yeshua talking about it when he says, in Mark chapter 7, he goes, traditions, some of the ones you have undermine Torah, like the tradition you have where you don't take care of your parents with the inheritance they gave you because you give it to the temple instead. But see, your obligation is to take that inheritance and take care of them. And then whatever's left to take care of you. So you're supposed to take care of them in their declining years when they need to be taken care of. See, I got a lot of people calling me up and they're just like, they're overstressed because they're trying to take care of parents. It's not even their job to take care of. But nobody else will, so they get stuck with it, okay? And unfortunately, we got a lot of weak men that are just overwhelmed trying to handle things because they can't barely handle their own lives. Okay, and then they make very poor decisions. You know what I would do? Okay, I even tried this for my father-in-law. I actually went and go to buy a house to move him into so he could be here, we could take care of him. And by the way, that my wife is not the oldest, and there's lots of brothers above her, but nobody was doing it. So I jumped in as a firstborn, okay? And of course, nobody liked it, so they didn't do it, and so now the thing is a mess. But that's the point to all of you, okay? So you younger men realize as you get older, you're going to be responsible to take care of and make sure your parents are okay. Now, parents, don't leave them a mess to take care of. My children will have very little to do to take care of me, okay, and my wife. I have that mostly set, and we'll continue to make sure that is set. But a lot of you have parents that didn't do that, and it's too late to fix it. Well, then it's going to be on you. Remember, they changed your diaper, so you might have to change theirs. That ain't a joke. It's just the reality of it. But, okay, you can clap for that, all right. But the firstborn needs to step up to the responsibility of being the firstborn. It really is really important. It's a good question. All right, let's go to Shelly Bell. Yay!
Shabbat Shalom, Papa Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom, Mishpachah.
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay, I had a few questions. Is that okay?
Sure. At least one. I already had Shakara only asked one, but we'll get to the one and we'll see if we get two or three. Go ahead.
Okay. I watched the Millennium and the Kingdom a few times. And one question that came up the last time I watched that I kind of like was just curiosity pretty much was, we know Hasatan's going to be locked up for 1,000 years. Does that mean that those in the first resurrection who will be teaching Torah and things like that for Yeshua in the Millennium, will they also be tested at the end when Hasatan is released?
All right. Remember, what is the reason why Hasatan is released? He's released so that those who were not tested get tested. All right? We're tested now because he's not locked up. So those in the first resurrection have already gone through a Hasatan testing. Now, is it possible that they would be tempted? I don't think he would give you the forever suit if he thinks that you won't pass that test. You have to have already passed it now. Okay? So he gets released at the end of the millennium because all those people who lived through the millennium will not have been tested. And his job is to test you. Okay? All right. Thank you, Shelley Bell. Second question, because that was a quick one.
All right. So I'm not dumb or anything, but I do try to grasp some stuff that's in Scripture. So when Cain leaves and goes like to Nod, I think it's Nod. My question is, when Elohim created man, was it mankind, like people around the world, or just Adam, Eve, and their family?
All right, this has come up before. And so, look, it does not say that he didn't make anybody else anywhere else, okay? This is we'll call it a story, but it's real, right? But this is an account that leads to the story or the account that goes from Adam and Chava down through to Yeshua, okay? Because we know that at some point, this one took wives from here, and this one took, and this is going on here and there. So, is it reasonable to believe that there were others in other places? I guess that's reasonable to believe. I'm not going to limit that. I've said that in the past. You know, where did all these people come from? Well, I know they lived to be like almost 1,000 years, okay, and they had lots of children. I don't know how far and wide they scattered, but this is something that we're dealing with. So I would say that it is very reasonable to believe others were of a different lineage, so to speak, not the straight one that we follow. I don't know from Adam and Chava then how that went and where they were placed or how they were moved around or what happened, okay? But there clearly are some other people. So logic dictates to just accept that reality, even if we don't know how that was all done, okay? All right, Shelly Bell, one more.
Okay, so when we were reading Genesis 4:23 and 24 kind of stood out a bit. I wanted to understand it better. When Lamech says about he killed a man for wounding him and a young man for hurting him, for Cain is avenged sevenfold and Lamech 77-fold. I know 7 is completion, right?
Well, I mean, look, we can look at different numbers for multiple different ways to look at it, okay? What's simply happening here is Lamech is trying to say, all right, that just like we know that Cain was told, hey, if, you know, because like, oh, you're going to separate me out, they're just going to kill me. He says, no, if someone's going to attack you, they're going to have a problem and have a response to that. And Lamech is just saying, well, if that's the case for Cain, it's even bigger for me. Okay, that was Lamech's boast or whatever he was trying to say there, okay? So he says, so if Cain is avenged sevenfold, well, then I'm 77-fold. So why is he saying all that and what's it all about? It doesn't say, okay?
One more quick one, real quick.
Sure.
Not scripture, but I started writing some new books with my grandson as like the character. And the storyline is going to be like pretty much my walk, but like the way I would tell him about it.
Sure.
So is that okay to like mention Rabbi Steve and Parsha Pearls, little things like that?
All right. This is a good question so everybody can hear this. I am not a cult leader. We're not here to control everything you do. However, if you mention me, m.t.o.i, or anything that is m.t.o.i's, it needs approval, okay? Do you understand that? You can do whatever you want.
I do.
Okay, so if you're going to mention Parsha Pearls, me, or whatever, you need my approval. And Parsha Pearls, you'll need Rebbitzon's approval and my approval. So that's all well and good. So just understand that once you're going to bring this ministry or any element of it that's connected in an obvious way to this ministry into the things that you're saying or doing, you need approval, okay?
I got your approval before to use you in my books from Elder.
Right,
I think
but nothing, approval to do still requires a screening of what actually got done for approval.
Right, it was just a picture that I had used in one of my books.
And that's fine. I'm just saying is, if I gave you permission to use me in your books, that didn't mean you could just do whatever you want. It means that each time you go to do that, you need to send it to me for approval. Okay? It's not a blanket approval.
Now,
okay.
I did send an email to Rebbitzon, but I know y'all busy. So I thought I'd ask right here to make sure I get permission first.
So you can go ahead and do this, but you can't publish it or do anything with it till I get to see it and make sure it's okay. All right?
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. The m.t.o.i Odessa person switched, and now it's Annabelle.
In your teachings, you have taught us that the enemy won't tempt us with something that isn't already there, like Eve. Eve seen the fruit and she wanted it. So in Genesis 4, verse 6, it says, Yahweh said to Cain, why is he wroth towards you, and why is your face fallen? And it says, if you do good, you are to be accepted. If you do not do good, towards the door is a sin. And it specifies he is lying, and towards you is his desire, and you must rule over him. So in that, he is lying, and his
All right.
desire is
It's
that
okay.
talking about hasatan?
What translation are you reading out of? Because it's horrible.
Well, I just kind of wrote down some stuff.
Let me read it. Let me read it to you because it sounds much more clear. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I need my Bible.
It says. All right. Let's so we read this. It says, if you do well, right? Yahweh says to Cain, why are you wroth? Why is your face fallen? He says, if you do well, is there not acceptance? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. In other words, it's right there, crouching, ready for you to sin. You are ready to sin. All right. He says, and its desire is for you. In other words, its desire is for you. In other words, it's your desire is to do these things, but you should master it. So let's get the him and all that other stuff out of there, all right? So basically what he's saying is, if you do well, isn't it accepted? But when you don't, he says you got to be careful because your desire and your emotion is going to lead to you sinning potentially. But you need to master your emotional desire because you're angry and you're crestfallen and you're victimized and you're pointing a finger and you're blaming, okay? So that's what it's talking about.
Okay, and the translation is the silver scriptures.
Oh, the new one. So it just must be the 2009 version versus the 98 version. I just don't like the way that's worded. Okay.
Okay. So that's what's wrong with it there. Yeah, because it says, like in 6:5, it says every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So
right. That was the emotional state of the group of people when Yahweh was deciding to wipe them out, right? Okay, and by the time we get to 6:5. Now, but just to understand that when we're looking at chapter 4 and we're looking at what Cain is interacting, he was emotionally responding, okay? He was imploding. He was frustrated, embarrassed, shamed, whatever. Even though that's not what Yahweh said to him, this is the choice he made in his response. And so Yahweh saying to him, I said, be careful now, because how you respond will open the door to that sin, because your desire is going to cause you to sin, and you need to master that. Because your desire is going to be to take revenge, to point the finger, to go lash out at somebody or whatever it is, instead of just fixing the problem. Okay?
Okay, because in this morning's zone, also you had spoken, and I'm sorry, I do this all the time, spare the rod and spoil the child.
Yep.
And you were talking about the authority.
Yep.
And so our children, or any of us really, we have to be taught what obedience is and what's good and what's evil, right? Because according to 6:5, our thoughts are always continually on evil. So we would have to be taught the obedience. Is that correct?
Well, okay, you're correct, but I don't like the way you kind of came about. Let me kind of rephrase it, okay? So the point is that it comes from the coming to know the authority, coming to respect and trust the authority, and then that's where the authority can show you the difference between what is good and what is evil. And that way you can have, then the discipline can also come from that authority. So it's when children and adults are under no authority that it all goes really badly, okay? Okay, so, but the children also are very hard to get to listen until, because I've got some parents in here that said, I do everything you can imagine, my kid just won't listen. Well, a lot of you end up adults doing the same thing because you do not have a relationship that leads to a respect, a fear or in reverence in a right way, even if it's a human being, so that you trust and so that you can receive. You can't receive from that which you don't trust and respect. And so your child may not receive partially because you've not earned their trust and respect because they've watched you be nuts in whatever things you do, okay? So it's hard. It also could be that the child is just, a lot of children are just really whatever they are. They have parental opposition defiance or whatever it is, okay? And so it's just really tough, all right? And then when they get old enough, they can start to actually be reasoned with, okay? All right? And by the way, just so I don't want to discourage you, it gets worse before it gets better. Because the 4-year-old that's really a problem as a teenager isn't going to be any better. But once they're old enough to start reasoning with them, and they can go out there and have things bite them in the butt and blow up in their face, and they can realize, you know what, maybe I should listen to somebody, okay? But the ones who come to me and have all the best results are the ones who respect and trust that Abba has put me in a position to serve and to bless and to guide. Now, those who don't come is because they still don't have the relationship where they respect and trust so they can receive. That's it, simple, period. Okay, Annabelle? So, when we're talking about the idea of when you spare the rod, you spoil the child, well, I talked about that as being that rod is authority. It's not smacking them with something. If you look at Psalm 23, it says, thy rod and thy staff comfort me, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Right? The rod and the staff. Why would something that smacks you comfort you? It's the rod represents authority. And the staff also is a guiding thing that the shepherd uses to guide the flock into safety, okay? And they don't necessarily go around beating the sheep, okay? But they guide them where they need to go, all right? And so, they even might use dogs that are barking, and barking's not such a big problem. There's no reason to be hitting them, though. It doesn't get any good result anyway. And by the way, the more you hit your kids, the less they're going to respect you and trust you anyway. Okay? They're just not. But they don't listen otherwise. Well, did you try anything else before you started smacking them? Yeah, I tried everything. Well, did that work? No. I said, okay, so now you got lots of things that don't work, including smacking them. So why are you smacking them? Okay? You got to earn their respect and their trust. My children, when I tell this story all the time, when I first took them out in public and I told them, because they knew from birth, my job is to keep them safe. I told them that all the time. Hey, what's daddy's job? To keep us safe. And they respected that and trusted that. So when I told them, if I can't see you, you're not safe, that got them nervous. I said, if we go in a store and I can't see you, you're not safe. My job's to keep you safe. I said, you want to make my job hard? Oh, no. So how do we know when you can't see us? I said, well, you can't see me, I can't see you. Now, we know that's not exactly true. But that's the only metaphor I could give them so they could have some sense of what it looked like. Because I could probably still see them even if they couldn't see me. That's not the point. But I told them, if you can't see me, I can't see you, you're not safe. That panicked them the first time they couldn't see me because they trusted and believed me what I said. But that was a relationship that was developed and built, all right? It's a relationship. And so the same thing we see playing out in here, all right? Annabelle, did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. I have other questions, but I'll get back in line.
Okay, and we may have plenty of time. It's only 4 o'clock, so we may end early today. I don't know how this is going to play out. All right, let's go to Edwin, who I saw yawning quite a bit. So Edwin, I hope you're not yawning anymore. Don't worry. They couldn't see you anyway. Only I could see you, so don't worry about it. All right.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so I have a few questions, but one of the first questions that I have.
Wait, hold on.
Is about.
Hold on. Tell everybody where you're from. I mentioned some of the people I know where they're from, but I don't know where you're from.
I'm from California.
California. Okay. Now go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. My first question is about food being offered to idols, and if we're able to eat, because there's kosher, and then there's places that have certified halal foods. And I was reading in 1 Corinthians chapter 8, and I just kind of wanted to see, what you thought about that, that whole chapter.
All right. So let's keep this very simple. All right. Food offered to idols would actually be slaughtered up in a temple to an idol. Okay, so having a Muslim guy show up at a factory and say some blessing facing Mecca or whatever they do is not necessarily offering it up to idols, okay? They're just saying a blessing over it in their understanding of whatever their understanding is. And the Jews do even less than that. The Jews are just certifying that it was killed a certain way and that the equipment was kept a certain way to separate anything in terms of meat and dairy and that kind of stuff. They're not saying any blessings. Because it's really funny how they say, oh, the rabbi blessed the animal. No, the rabbis don't bless anything when they go to do these things. They're making sure things were done correctly according to what they understand, all right? Now, the Muslims will say a blessing. You know what? You don't know what food's been said what over. I remember when we first started ministry, I had a person come up to me who worked in some factory somewhere and talked about how, oh, we pray over every item that goes past the conveyor belt. I'm like, oh, that's nice. You know. And so now I got to worry about, like, this would mean I would have to worry about if I believed all that nonsense. I have to worry about every item that's been prayed over because, you know, whoever worked in the factory prayed over each item. It's not what it's talking about, okay? It's talking about people participating in the pagan temple rituals with the animals being slaughtered as part of the sacrifices and then eating those animals, okay? That is not happening in like almost anywhere today unless you actually find a pagan temple somewhere where they're sacrificing an animal and you eat it, okay? But in all your stores and all your other places, so if it says halal, and actually there's some countries, like in Australia, you almost can't get anything that doesn't say halal on it, okay? It's fine if at least you know it's not pork, okay? Because they're using the same kashrut that we are to a certain degree. I mean, those animals are gonna be the animals that are clean, okay? So yes, you can eat that. You don't have to worry about that, all right? But let me just make this a little bit more clear, okay? I had a gentleman that was part of the ministry many years ago who worked in a chicken farm, you know, that sold to like the big chicken guys like Purdue or whoever, right? The big chicken guys. And he had a guy who he used to work with that then had switched from the farm to the factory. So he called him up one day and said, how's things going at the factory? He said, oh man, yesterday was a big day because the imam or whoever showed up here to do this, you know, the blessing for the halal stuff, okay? And he said, well, how did they do that? Did they separate out the stuff for the halal? He says, no, they just blessed all the chickens and some of them go in halal packaging, the others go in regular packaging. So you don't know. Because it's easier for the factory to just say, go ahead and say the blessing over everything. That way, whatever we put halal on is fine, and the ones we don't is still fine. And that way, they don't have to figure it out up front. So you're eating halal food anyway. That's my point, okay? Did that help, Edwin?
Yes. Dude, can I ask one more or
sure.
Get back in line?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Do you have to be circumcised to wear tzitzit or no?
Do you have to be circumcised to wear tzitzit? You know what? I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before. Look, tzitzit and circumcision are both signs of covenant. Of course, Sabbath keeping is also, you don't have to be circumcised to keep the Sabbath initially. So I would say no. But the thing is, you have to understand that you're claiming with your tzitzit. This is a claim of covenant. Okay? So I would say if you're going to want to wear tzitzit, you ought to go ahead and get circumcised. Otherwise, what's the point of wearing the tzitzit? All right?
Yes. Oh, okay, cool. All right. Thank you, Rabbi.
All right. And if you have more questions, you can always get back in line. All right. Let's go now to, let's see, Monique. Yay, Monique.
Hi. So I have a question. So
okay,
what
hold
are your
on.
thoughts?
We all know you here. I forgot where you're located, though. Where do you live?
Oh, I'm in Washington State.
Washington State, okay. Because you were here just, last week or two, whatever, for Sukkot. But they don't all know you, even though we all know you. That's why everybody clapped. Okay, go ahead, Monique.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on self-esteem? So, I understand the psychological mind. You said a what?
I said I'm a big fan of it.
Okay. So it's not the same as esteeming yourself, thinking pridefully of yourself?
No.
Okay.
Look. What is the opposite, right? Okay, the opposite of esteeming yourself, okay, is humility. Okay, because esteeming yourself is pride. Okay, ego. What's the opposite of self-esteem, though? a lack of self-worth, a lack of value, okay? All these horrible things you'll end up thinking about yourself, okay? So self-esteem, think of it more like self-worth, self-value, self-appreciation, all right? If we use the word esteem, the way I usually read it when I read scripture, what word do I normally replace esteem with? Honor. Thank you, Maisie, right? Honor. So let's call it self-honor. Now, esteeming yourself isn't very honorable. Honoring yourself is not the point. Having and appreciating and honoring yourself, in other words, having respect for that, you made efforts, you bring value, you have qualities that are valuable to people. Recognizing, honoring those good parts of self is not the same as, what we call this, esteeming oneself in a way that's, braggadocious and prideful and ego and all that kind of terrible stuff, right? So you're not strutting around. You just feel good that you're doing the best you can to become him, and you feel good of the progress you're making, you feel good. So you give honor to that part of you that now has value, that you value correctly. Okay? So if you can value you correctly and still be humble, then it's not the wrong type of esteem. Okay? All right. So hopefully, did that answer the question, Monique?
Yeah, that actually helped a lot. I wrote down self-worth is a possibility. So I like that you use the honor part, because what I'm getting is you're talking about more of the intrinsic things. So like the internal workings of you transforming, changing, growing, those type of things. I have a second question that's kind of related to something he talked about.
Hold on, I got a little more. You know how that works. Okay, that comes out. Okay, having proper self-worth or self-esteem, now we're going to compare it to the other side, is accurate to what you have. Esteeming yourself means now you're elevating yourself compared to other people, right? When it's self-esteem, you're only looking at you. Self-esteem only looks at you. Self-worth only looks at you. Doesn't compare you to anybody, okay? Esteeming yourself, the thing that's a negative thing, is you're comparing you to somebody else. You see the difference? That's the difference between esteeming yourself versus self-esteem. Self-esteem is all about me, how I feel about me compared to nobody, just how I feel about me, okay? And no matter what you feel about me, can't shake that. It's my self-worth, my self-feeling. Now, people who esteem themselves, in other words, in a thing that's a wrong thing to do, they're elevating themselves in comparison to somebody else, okay? Now they're braggadocious, they're prideful, they're cocky, they're whatever, right? Because I'm gonna look down on somebody. Self-worth is simply me assessing myself and looking for the good and finding that value without comparing to anybody. See, some of you have lousy self-worth because you're still doing it the other side. You can get real braggadocious on one side, you can get really down in the dumps because you're comparing yourself to others and you feel like you fall short all the time. Stop comparing yourself to anybody else. Okay, that's going to always lead to either one, the prideful side, or the depressed, victim side or something, whatever. You're going to end up in this terrible place. Don't compare yourself to other people. You want to compare yourself to you. How are you today versus yesterday or last month or last year? Okay? And then if you can find anything that's grown, that should increase your self-worth, your self-value, your self-esteem. I feel good about myself. I'm better this right now than I was last year. I'm not arrived yet. I'm still not happy about a bunch of stuff you might be feeling, but that's okay. But you're only looking at you versus you, not you versus a sibling or a friend or a coworker or whoever, all right? Okay, so that was the more full answer. Okay, Monique, what's your second question?